Hey everybody, my name's Kevin. I'm the product development director here at JYG Pro, and I'm also the rod builder. So we build our tribute rods all in-house. I build all of them by hand, and today I'm going to be showing you how I build them. So the tributes that we make come in power 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Today I'm going to be building a few different sizes. We can start with a power 2. So these blanks are a little different than what you'd find in your, in your standard tackle shop, because these blanks are catered more for the technical jig fishermen. They have a much faster recovery rate. That doesn't mean that they're fast action. They're very parabolic, like a standard, like you'd want your slow pitch rod to be. However, their recovery rate and how fast they straighten out after being loaded up is significantly faster than most of the other blanks that you'll find out there. This means you have a more responsive rod when you are jigging, and it's more sensitive as well. So the first step in building a tribute is finding the spine. This is very important because you don't want that rod to roll in your hands. I'm wrapping these traditionally, not with an acid wrap, so I really need to make sure that the rod is loading down the axis of its spine. So I'll load my rod up. There's my spine right here. And that line denotes the inside of the curvature. So my guides will be on the opposite side of that line. These rods are unique. They load so well that we have to come up with a one-of-a-kind, unique approach to this issue that we were having with the components. And so to keep the rods light, but also allow the blank to flex all the way through, we're using hollow carbon components, hollow carbon fiber components. It keeps the weight way down. And with specially designed EVA foam arbors through the grip and reel seat, that rod can bend all the way through. And I'm about to, put this rod together so you guys can see how it's done. The carbon fiber alone is very pretty, but we also went with a rubberized cork, not only because it's durable, but I think it's also very aesthetic, and it adds a pop to the rods where it's not just all black, but you also have some sort of natural color to it. It's not as bright as regular cork, so it's design purposes. Because these butt caps are used on all the rods, I have to use a little bit of tape on this one just to make sure it's a tight fit, and then I'll epoxy it on. Good. So, these were all designed in our CAD program, so we were able to make these fit everything perfectly together. And I'll just pop this off so you can see everything fits perfectly together. And that's super light because it's only this piece, and hollow carbon. So I've laid out all the components that go into a rod. So what I like to do to make it easier on myself is I'll pre-glue all the components that are going on the rod before. So I'll have this is the butt grip, that's the butt cap, the rear grip, and I've pre-glued some of these reel seats with the arbors inside of them already. And everything fits very nice, all the seams are clean, but I've kind of laid out all the parts that go into this grip system. So you have your carbon, you have your rubberized cork trim ends. In your rear grip, you have this small piece of foam, and that slides in there. here's one of the blank rings, because we engrave all of our rings, but I'll go into that a little bit later. And so this ring will slide onto that foam perfectly there. This foam arbor slides through the reel seat, and that'll epoxy onto the blank for a clean, having this foam.
Why do you have the EVA?
Of doing this EVA foam arbor system is that it's flexible, and it'll allow the blank to flex through the entire system without ruining the adhesion between the reel seat and the grip and the blank. If you use something stiff like just epoxy and tape, you will have, you know, spots where it'll lift up and crack. But considering the entire surface area of all this foam is epoxy, you won't have that issue, and you'll maintain the flexibility and you'll maintain the curvature through the entire handle and reel seat. So what makes this rod special? Why do I think this is the best slow pitch rod in the world? It's lighter, it's very well balanced, and the blank is unlike any other blank that you'll find out there. The bread and butter, the beauty of all of this is this handle and reel seat system. It's all hollow carbon. These are the lightest components that you'll find. At the bottom of this rod, we have this solid rubber butt cap. Oh, but it's heavy. No, what it does is it helps balance the rod. Now you have a rod that when you're holding it, the balance is exactly in the middle of the reel seat. For a slow pitch rod, that's important because you want the weight to be in the center of the reel seat when you're holding the reel, or maybe even a little bit further back because you're jigging all day with it. So that butt cap's there. Rear grip, or the butt grip here, rear grip here, and reel seat just ahead. And I'm gonna put this together now so you guys can see. Reaming out the grip. Now I've already pre-glued everything together, so all I did was remount this that cork ring. That's fine there. The epoxy is going to act like a lubricant, so it'll slide down the last few inches. Now I'll remount this rear grip. Same thing. Pretty good there. Now I understand there might be some apprehension in some rod builders about wanting to use an EVA foam arbor. That's not an issue because you have to think about the internal forces that are acting on this foam. That rod is bending, right? This foam is bending with it. This carbon fiber is elastic and it'll bend with it. The only forces that are acting on this are a surface force, right? And the epoxy's holding it. So it's not gonna break, it's not gonna come apart. There's no worry there, trust me. So, I mean, this rod is the Tribute rod. And this was the owner of Jig Pro, Jorge's idea, to create a rod as a tribute to the Japanese method of slow pitch jigging, which is traditional wrap guides, all of them on top, yada yada. I don't agree with it. However, it works. But personally, I think the acid wrap is better. The Japanese won't even touch the acid wrap. That's not to say that they don't build some of the best slow pitch rods in the world. This is just a simple personal opinion that I think the acid wrap is better because you're mitigating all the torsion that's acting on the rod along the length of the rod. Now with high-end blanks, you don't really have that problem, but still. So the acid wrap with an acid wrap, you have the benefit of you get fewer tip wraps, first of all, which is very nice if you have a bit of a sloppy or aggressive jigging technique. So I'm just scoring the blank a little bit, make sure that I have good adhesion with my epoxy. I'm not digging into the carbon. What I'm just doing is, you know, these blanks have they have the epoxy ridges from the manufacturing process. So all I'm doing is scoring those ridges and making sure that I have a little bit more surface area for my adhesion. But back to my previous rant. I think the acid wrap is better for a few reasons. So, you know, with the guides that we have today, the line is kind of hanging off the rod by a few millimeters. So you do have some sort of lever acting on that rod. You can take any rod and grab the tip and grab the the lower section of the rod. You can twist it 90 degrees. Some rods you can twist it 180 degrees, and that's internal torsion inside of that blank. And that does have an effect, especially with lighter rods. Now, with the acid wrap, what you're doing is you're taking that torsion that's happening along the length of the entire rod, and you're condensing it into this stiffer, stronger butt section of the rod. So there's less torsion acting. I mean, the guides have to handle that torsion, but if you're using a double foot guide along your rotation guides, it should be fine. Plus, with, you know, there's the worry that there's too much friction added due to the rotation of the acid wrap. But even with like Fuji alkanite guides, the technology is there where the coefficient of friction is so minimal that it's a negligible difference. So now, when I first met Jorge, he came into the Fisherman Center where I was working as a custom rod builder, and he showed me this this acid wrapped rod, a slow pitch rod. I'd never seen a slow pitch rod before, and I thought it was ridiculous. You can never catch an offshore fish with a rod like that. It's silly, it's dumb. That night, I went on to Slow Jigging Secrets. It's an online forum for slow pitch jigging, and I spent probably 6 hours. I was up until 5 a.m. translating Japanese web pages, learning about slow pitch jigging and understanding what it was, and I was hooked. So I have a thorough respect for the Japanese craftsmanship in their slow pitch rods. I have a thorough respect in the way that they fish and how technical they are and everything that they do. So yes, personally, I think the acid wrap is better, but that doesn't mean that I think traditional wrapped rods are bad per se. I would say that this traditional wrapped Tribute is better than any other acid wrapped rod out there. That's just me. Yeah, so I mean, I was working at a custom rod shop, and I was building acid wrap rods, and I could see in some of the older gentlemen who'd never seen a rod like that before, like the apprehension in switching to a rod where the guides are upside down, they're rotating on the wrong side, you didn't line them up straight, whatever. I mean, I get it, you know, and I also understand how it's more comfortable for some people, even if it's just comfortable mentally, you know, using a traditional wrapped rod. I get it. I still fish a regular traditional wrapped Tribute. I get it. Like some of the bigger brands out there, I won't say any names, but some of the JDM brands out there, I don't think they'll switch over to acid wrap anytime soon, because they have people in Japan who are staunchly against the acid wrap, and you know, I understand it. I lost my mark. There it is. So that was the backside. So what I'll do is I'll So I found my spine before, but I lost my mark. But that's no problem, because I can re-find the spine now. For any rod builder that is also apprehensive of doing a spiral wrap, you don't need to. You don't need to do an acid wrap. The traditional wrap works perfectly fine, especially with how good blanks are nowadays. The traditional wrap works fine. The only issue is you're going to spend a lot of time static loading that rod, that blank, and figuring out where the guide placement should be. The acid wrap also has the added benefit of the guides are on the bottom, the line's on the bottom. You have zero chance of that line contacting the blank. You don't have that with the traditional wrapped rod. So there is it's quite a bit more time intensive in figuring out how to build the proper rod for that blank with the traditional layout. Our premier product tester, Rob, the Secret Squirrel, one of the first slow pitch jigger fishermen in the States. He has quite a few of like the original old JDM, high-end, high-dollar slow pitch rods. And I asked him after I built a few of these rods, I said, Rob, can you weigh this rod and weigh some of your Japanese rods and tell me how this lines up? And this was around 28 grams lighter. This rod was significantly lighter than all of them. So I'm pretty confident that this is the best performing, the lightest. It took Jorge about a year just to get the blank right. It took me about 3 months just to get the grip system right. So 15 months total of development, plus building some prototypes just to get the guide layouts right. Plus, I spent 6 hours at home myself, static loading every single blank, trying to get the guide layouts just right. Because the guide layouts on all these rods is exactly the same. The loading profile on all these blanks is exactly the same. The only difference is the amount of loading it takes to get the same deflection, but the deflection curve is the same along all these blanks. So I myself have a few of the high-end Japanese JDM slow pitch rods, and the issue that I had is, let's say a reel seat comes loose, and thankfully I'm a rod builder and I can fix that myself, but to think your average Joe spent $1,000 on a rod and something happens to the rod, you have to somehow get in contact with this JDM company, this Japanese company, and get it repaired or replaced, and that's a hassle. We're located here in Jupiter, Florida. You send me your rod if it breaks, and I will fix it and send it right back to you. Or I'll build you a new one and send it right back to you. If I have to build you a new one, you give me $60 and I'll send you a brand new one. So it's nice. It's nice being able to get, in my opinion, the best slow pitch rods in the world relatively locally. So you might have noticed my stack of little wet alcohol paper towel squares, and that's because I'm constantly cleaning the epoxy residue off these rods. That's a little tip for you rod builders, is tear your paper towels into little squares, and it helps to get it in all the little cracks and crevices. Fold a little corner, you can get really get into those edges. There's a lot that goes into building one of these rods, but it has to be done. Because if this rod wasn't built this way, it wouldn't perform like it does. And I don't want to have another rod that's built like every other rod out there. That's silly. That defeats the whole purpose of moving the technology forward. So, yes, it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of components. But weigh this rod, put it on a scale, and weigh some of the other rods that you can find out there for twice as much money, and I guarantee you it weighs less. Fish this rod and fish some of the other rods out there, and I guarantee you it fishes better. I didn't show how I put this together, but that's a standard Fuji TVS hood, and you know, carbon fiber cork. My guides are already pre-ground. These are Fuji titanium, black titanium silicon carbide guides. They don't rust, they're ultra light, and the silicon carbide ring means there's minimal friction, which is very important when you have a rod like this with a bunch of guides on it, because each of those little friction coefficients, they add up. So I'm about to do something when I wrap this that a lot of rod builders don't do. So I learned from the old guys, and I wrap pretty old school where I hold the spool. A lot of rod builders like using the little carriage, but I feel like I have more versatility, and I can align my thread a little bit better holding the spool. So I'm about to do something here that not a lot of rod builders do, is I double wrap all of my guides. Why is this important? Well, these rods are very parabolic, so there's a lot of bending happening. So the end of those guide feet like to pop out from under the thread. So this will increase the durability of your wraps and maintain the aesthetics over time, so you don't have any weird little spots popping out of the guide foot. And this is just a protective measure that I take. Now this is, you know, these rods are meant to be fished hard. That doesn't mean that this rod's for everybody. You know, yes, I'm doing everything I can to make this rod as durable as possible, but if you're just getting into slow pitch jigging, don't buy this rod. Don't. When you're 16 years old and you get your license, you don't hop into a Ferrari and you go take it for a drive. You get into your dad gives you an old Honda Accord and you go crash it a few times, and then you buy something nicer, and then you get into the nice car. This is a rod for advanced people who know what they're doing. Technique above all, always. Whether you're working out, whether you're jigging, whatever, technique is the most important thing, because this rod is a hollow carbon fiber rod, just like most other rods out there. And if you high stick this rod, you will break it. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This rod can break. So, yes, I'm doing everything I can on my end to prevent that. You know, double wrapping the feet, making sure this bends all the way through the reel seat, whatever. It's still up to the fisherman to make sure that rod doesn't break. So, good technique. So, you're probably asking yourself, why in the world would I spend $600 on a rod anyways? Well, these are, as I mentioned, titanium Fuji guides. They are corrosion resistant. They have a better ring material. Sure, you can get the silicon carbide guides in a stainless frame, but that's still going to corrode. And they're much lighter weight. And that's very important for a technical rod like this. A rod, a fishing rod, is simply a spring mass system. The more weight that you have on the end of that spring mass system, the longer and larger your oscillations will be. When you load up your rod, right, when you're jigging, and you load that rod up, and that rod tip whips up, you don't want it to keep doing this. You want that rod tip to come up and stay there. When you have heavier guides on the end of that rod, it'll maintain those oscillations and continue wobbling, and that's a problem. That's not an ideal, that's not an optimal rod. So to get this as optimal as possible, to get this to be the best performing rod as possible, we needed the lightest guides possible, so we went with titanium. My epoxy's cured, all my guides are wrapped on, and that's it. This rod's ready to get coated. So I want you to think, you know, what is the perfect race car? It's a car with a frame, an engine, a powerful engine, 4 wheels, and that's it. You want that car to be as light as possible. You don't want any extra fancy bells and whistles. You don't want unnecessary stuff on that car because it'll add weight, and weight is a detriment when it comes to performance. It's the same thing with rods. I don't add any trim bands to any of the wraps. I don't have any trim wraps on the end of the seat, on the end of the grips. I don't have any excess wraps anywhere. If it's on the rod, it's because it needs to be there. So the only things on this rod are the essentials. And that's important for longevity and fishability. So if you add any color to a rod, it's the nature of your, you know, finishing epoxy that it will yellow out. That's why we went with all black wraps, because the rod will maintain this aesthetic for years on end. If you fish a rod with very light colored wraps, it'll look ugly in a couple years if you fish it a lot. So, and you know, just to maintain the same aesthetic for the lifetime of the rod, we went with just all black, no frills, just performance. So this rod's pretty much done. All I have left to do is line up my guides, coat it with epoxy. I have 2 flex coat, 4 rod dryers, so I have to build 7 more rods to fill up the dryers. I have to do that. For all my rod builders out there, these blanks are available through Angler's Resource. You can contact us at Jig Pro Fishing if you want to get any of the handle systems for an extra charge. I'll engrave, a ring with whatever you want on it. We do all the engraving in-house. These rods all have their own serial numbers. These are done in batches of 10. So these are one-of-a-kind rods. And I'm a rod builder. I understand that people want to have something that they want to call their own. So if you want something engraved personally, I can do that for you. If you're curious about acid wrapping slow pitch rod, contact us. I will walk you through that happily. So this is the second to last step. This is the first coat of epoxy. Once this cures for a good 8 hours, I'll wait until tomorrow. After this first coat, I'll shave off any burrs or anything, any flyaway hairs from the thread, and then give it a final coat tomorrow. But so once I have this coat on, second coat goes on tomorrow. Once I finish that final coat and the rod cures for another day, we ship all these rods in this neat little protective pouch. So, if you're traveling with it, it'll keep it from getting scuffed up, protect the carbon fiber. If you're taking it on the boat, you can keep it in the console if you don't really want to, if you're worried about getting your rod messed up. So it's nice. And All the rods come with a certified Fuji tag that it is titanium silicon carbide rings. I'm gonna go in the dryer. That's up. Just hit it quick with the torch. Make sure I get any bubbles come up to the surface. And I'll come back and hit it with the torch one more time in like an hour or 30 minutes just to make sure all those bubbles are popped and I get a perfect finish. And that's a wrap. Thank you guys for sticking with me. If you want to buy a Tribute, feel free to go on jigprofishing.com and you can buy a Tribute. They're also available in select dealers. If you would like to build your own Tribute, you can go to Angler's Resource and they would provide the blanks. You can get all the guides from there. You can buy the hood, the reel seat hood from there. If you were interested in buying the handle set, you can get that from us. Yeah, any questions, suggestions, anything that you want to see, let me know. You can reach out to us on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube comments or email. Any form of communication works. So, thank you guys.
Think deeper.